नमस्कार दोस्तों और जय हिंद। आप सभी को स्वागत है इन माय चैनल 1971 वॉर बुक सीरीज। तो दोस्तों, आज हम एक स्पेशल प्रोग्राम करने वाले हैं विद एयर कॉमोडोर नितिन साठे रिगार्डिंग हिज एक्सपीरियंसेस ऑफ फ्लाइंग द इंडियन एयरफोर्स Mi-35 attack helicopter. The Mi-35 was actually of Russian, I would say Soviet origin, which the Indian Air Force had decided to use specially against armored threats, against any armored confrontation, and specially for UN missions. इसके बारे में और भी अच्छी तरह से हम जानेंगे from the Air Commodore himself, and as a matter of fact, Air Commodore Nitin Sathe is the son of Colonel Sathe, who had taken part in the Bangladesh Liberation War from the 23 Mountain Regiment. Hence, it is a privilege to find somebody who had served in the Indian Air Force and also is the son of a 1971 war veteran. He had also been there in one of our previous programs where he did talk about his father's part in the Bangladesh Liberation War, and today, as an expert in this Mi-35 attack helicopter, he will be talking about his own experiences as well, including giving us a brief description of the helicopter and why the Indian Air Force decided to choose this helicopter and the future of the attack helicopters in present day and future conflicts. So let's welcome him to our program today.
Okay, so first of all, sir, I would like to have a brief overview and description of the shifts of how the Indian Air Force, transitioned from the Mi-4 to the Mi-8 to Mi-17 and then to the attack helicopter Mi-35 that we are going to discuss about today, sir. If you could give a brief talk on that.
Okay. The Indian Air Force went for the Mi-4s after they realized that they needed some medium lift capability, just about during the Indo-China conflict around that time, little before that, in fact. So we were on American helicopters till then, the Sikorsky and all that, for training, as well as S-55 we had. That's the biggest we had. Otherwise, we had the small Bell.
That's the training, I think.
That's the training, actually. So that is all that we had till then, and there was no impetus, there was no budgeting, given for helicopter operations. Buying new helicopters, because the need was not felt as at that point in time. But when the armed forces, the army deployed along the eastern front, thanks to 1962, we needed lift capability for getting the troops their food as well as their weapons and all that, and also to carry out casualty evacuation if required.
Right.
So therefore this was an emergent kind of a condition, and they went in for the Mi-4, which was a banana deal, if I may call it. Those times the Russians used to not really charge us in dollars, so it was a aircraft that was bought pretty cheap, right? So the Mi-4s came in, and the Mi-4s also had the capability to fire some rockets. And they had some capability, but not very, very sparingly used in that role, because the other roles took up most of the flying effort that was required. And in any case, in that time, attack helicopter requirement was not really felt as much. It was not. In fact, what happened during the Americans going into Vietnam and the lessons thereafter, those guys, the use of the Cobra there and all that. So that actually spurred the minds of the Indian Air Force thinkers to think about having an offensive platform, so to speak, on a helicopter.
Okay.
But it was still a long way off. So when we transitioned from the Mi-4 to the Mi-8s, I think 1972, if I'm not wrong, 71, just after the war. Mi-8s had just come in during the 71 war, actually. The first few Mi-8s had already come in. So the Mi-8 was capable of firing some rockets. They had the 57 millimeter rockets. They had one gun which could be put in the nose where the engineer sits. So there used to be one guy sitting in the nose of the aircraft firing the gun through
Machine
the
gun, right, sir?
yes, a machine gun. So that was an armed helicopter kind of a thing that we were talking about in those times. The same thing again transitioned, Mi had transitioned to Mi-17s and then the various variants of Mi-17s. And as we went along, the systems became better and better. But the armament on the Mi-8s, Mi-17s almost remained similar. I mean, it was not there was not much change as far as the armed version was concerned because it carry only those rockets. All the number of rockets increased to 192 in case of
Me
the Mi
8.
17.
Me
No, Mi
17.
7. Mi 17 it came to 192 rockets.
Acha,
Massive.
acha.
Six spots. Six spots of 32 each. So it became a big firepower kind of a thing. But again, where do we use this thing? It in hot war conditions and low level flying, it is very vulnerable. The helicopter is very big. It's vulnerable. It's not so fast. So it can be used more for insurgency kind of operations or something like what happened in Sri Lanka.
Right.
So in Sri Lanka, we utilized some part of the firing from a Mi-8
Okay.
helicopter, and thereafter Mi-17s we continue to train on Mi-17s on armament, although not much use in the armament role as such, right?
Okay.
Um, the Kargil when Kargil happened 1999. Um, that is the time. Sorry, I'm fast forwarded. I should come back. 1984. 1984. We decided to go in for the Mi-25. The Russians offered us the Mi-25, the Hind D.
Hind.
Behind the D. Yeah. So that was again a similar Mi-8, compressed Mi-8. They just made tandem seating. They removed the cabin at the back, the passenger cabin. They made a small passenger cabin.
Okay.
Made the aircraft a little lighter, and gave it a little better engine. The same engine, little uprated basically, and gave us the Mi-25 in 1984. Okay, so the first squadron was formed at Pathankot, 125 helicopter squadron.
1 to 5.
Okay, 125, pure Mi-25 squadron. And the Mi-25 was a very, very rustic kind of aircraft, So Russian made, very sturdy, very, very sturdy. Underpowered a little bit for Indian conditions, hot conditions. It was a little underpowered. It couldn't really climb to altitudes and operate at altitudes. Okay, and the armament it carried was limited. Okay, so as we went along, it graduated to the Russians. By that time, had already got the Mi-25E, the Hind E in place. They had improved their engines to operated their engines. They had got a huge new armament package
Okay.
that was now incorporated onto the Mi-35.
Acha, acha.
Okay, so now we could fire rockets, we could fire guns, we could fire cannons on the side, we could have grenade launchers, we had the S-24 rocket, we had the works, the
Okay.
works. Whatever a fighter could carry, we could carry all the armament that it would carry. We could also carry the 80 millimeter rocket.
80
So,
millimeter. Acha.
so from 57 we upgraded to 80 millimeters. So all this variation in armament, it could carry bomb dispensers,
Acha, acha.
bomblet dispensers. It could carry 2.5 kg small bombs in a big canister. It used to drop them, and they used to go down in small packets, and they used to burst and cause damage.
Right.
So those kind of armaments came in. So the Mi-35 was technically, if you ask me, was the most advanced attack helicopter that we had in the times. So from Mi-24 Hind D to Hind E, that is 25 to 35. It took. We got when we came back from Sri Lanka in 1989.
That is when.
So 84 to 89, we operated only Mi-25. In Sri Lanka also we operated the Mi-25.
Okay.
Okay. When we came back from Sri Lanka, the last month when we came back from Sri Lanka was the time when we got the Mi-35. The first Mi-35 in flight flew in along with the R-125 detachment coming back from Sri Lanka.
Acha, acha, acha.
It was, kind of timed in such a manner that our pilots went from there and picked up the aircraft from Bombay and got them in. Okay, so they came in crates in Bombay, and then we started picking them up one by one.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the time when the second squadron was formed. The 104 helicopter squadron, which was attack helicopter squadron employing only Chetaks,
Only Chetaks. Okay.
only Chetaks with the ATGM missile.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the anti-tank guided missile. Okay, it had the one SS-11, AS-11B1.
Okay.
So SS was surface to surface, AS was air to surface, AS-11B1 missile, a French missile that was carried on the Chetak. There is purely anti-tank role. Okay.
Okay.
So if you ask me, if you technically the Chetak with the anti-tank missile could be called an attack helicopter.
Attack helicopter. And I think
Dedicated.
mostly limited to it. I mean, taking out tanks only.
Yeah, only anti-tank one. Only anti-tank one. It didn't have anything else. We
Okay.
could take out some bunkers and all, but it was just thought about. We never really operated in an offensive manner.
Because after
Yeah.
71 war, there was no armor to armor confrontation, I would say.
So that's what. In Sri Lanka, we operated the Chetak with missile also. We just we had a lot of life expired missiles that needed to be expended.
Acha.
So we went and fired into the jungles against the LTT
Okay.
from the Chetak. In fact, there's one. I think he must be holding a world record. One. I think Raghunath, his name was, who fired close to 70, 80 missiles from the helicopter. It's we could just get to fire about 5, 6. In my whole tenure, because I was training others,
Mm-hmm.
I could fire 5, 6 of them. Otherwise, people just fired 1, 2, 1, 2. That's it. There were not many missiles available. Okay, on the Chetak. So we have gone back and forth a little bit, but okay. So the Mi-35 then started flying from 1990 in the two squadrons. One from Chetaks, they converted 104 squadrons converted from Chetaks to Mi-35 direct,
Okay.
and we operated a mix of Mi-25 and 35 in 1 to 5. Okay, so that's how both the squadrons were. Then both the squadrons were affiliated to the strike corps formations of the Indian Army.
Acha.
Okay, so we came under the Indian Army directly for operational reasons. So there was a little hodgepodge, two people pulling you in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
Command control was an issue, but then there were things changing. There was a joint implementation directive of 1984, which said that the attack helicopter squadrons will operate under the army, under the operational command of the army, and then there were a lot of things in that.
Mm-hmm.
But that in letter and spirit, the entire that implementation directive, joint directive, did not work out in totality. It was just in bits and pieces that some command and control went to the army, some army officers came to us to fly, those kind of things happened.
Like
Okay.
I mean I would say like people who were like there have been a lot of people from the infantry and armored corps shifting to be pilots also. So
Yeah, that happened. That because the aviation corps came
aviation
up
corps, right?
after the ROP finished,
Mm-hmm.
and the aviation corps came up. So then they allowed all arms to come in.
Mm-hmm.
Till that time, it was only artillery
Right.
boys who were coming in.
Mhm.
So it was by minor. That was really not much. Just then, kind of everybody could apply for getting into helicopters.
Right.
So you got armored corps guys, infantry guys. Everybody was kind of wanting to come in, which was a good thing actually.
Acha, acha.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, sir, coming to the transition from 17 to 35, as we have seen, like the Kargil disaster, of course, with the
Yes.
Mi-17, the unfortunate disaster. So the reason of, if you could talk in a brief of why the Mi-35 uh, could have been used for such a role where the Mi-17 was deployed, because I would say it was more of an attack helicopter, but it was not being deployed.
We tried to. We did a lot of trials.
Okay.
When Kargil was to happen, and commanders knew that there will be a requirement of use of the Mi-35 at high altitudes. We did trials climbing. First we went to Srinagar, then we did firing trials at the high altitude range there
Mhm.
near Srinagar.
Mhm.
Thereafter, we stripped the aircraft of almost everything just to make it cross Khardungla Pass, because it was not fit enough to go to Leh.
Acha,
You know,
acha.
it was not climbing with all that equipment on board. It was not. It didn't have the climb power. It was just the limit of the aircraft was 4.5 kilometers
Mhm.
height. That's about 15,000 feet. So it could not climb beyond 15,000 feet. It was underpowered for high. It was never designed for that.
Right, right.
So let's take it that way. So we tried. We said, okay, let's take out thing, go there, put less fuel. All those little things were tried out. We make it as light as possible. We managed to cross Kardungla once, but that was that. It was not possible to operate the helicopter with its armament load for the tasks that were envisaged. Okay. So the idea was dropped, and therefore the Mi-17 armament guys came into Kargil,
Acha,
right?
acha.
So that is why the Mi-17 with 192 rockets each were utilized during Kargil, and that is the time when we lost the Mi-17 to a missile, shoulder-fired missile fired by the Pakistanis. Squadron leader Pundir and Flight Lieutenant Mohilan were flying that aircraft, and Wing Commander Sinha was in the lead, the CEO of the unit. So we lost that aircraft on one of the last few days of the war, actual war that happened, right? After which the helicopter operation actually came to a standstill. Attack helicopter, I mean the armed version. We didn't fly after that. After we lost that aircraft, we also didn't fly. Why were we utilizing the helicopter as against a fighter is another story actually. Fighters were not effective because we were not using PGMs, precision guided munitions. Okay, so a free fall bomb dropped from a MiG-27, if it missed by a couple of feet, it could miss by a mile because on mountains they were right on the top. The Pakistanis were right on top of the peaks. So we had to actually hit them with pinpoint accuracy, and we didn't have that wherewithal at that point in time, except for some high-end, weapons that we did not want to use against, these kind of targets. So, that is the time they did some jugaad and they put that GPS kit onto the bomb.
Acha.
Okay, and then they fired the bomb from the Mirages, GPS with a GPS kit, and then they could hit the targets. So it was felt that there was a lot of discussions going on in Srinagar as well as in Jammu, in Udhampur, the headquarters of command, where how can we utilize the helicopter in an offensive role during that time. So it was finally decided that we will use the helicopters at targets which have been, which are clear, and we'll get a clear run-in through the valleys, element of surprise, low speed, quick delivery of 192 rockets, come back
Right.
as fast as possible. And that point in time, we also had not envisaged that we had shoulder-fired missiles over there. Not as many as they fired. They fired as many as 38 missiles onto that formation that went that day. Okay, so that's what people say, that there were missiles flying all over. Only one got the helicopter.
I think
Hai
we owe a lot of gratefulness towards the flares.
Yeah, flares were used. Yes,
Yeah.
flares. I don't know how effective they were, but they were used in good quantity. And this particular aircraft which shot down was without flares, so one can kind of extrapolate or think, it fell down. I mean, it was shot because it did not have flares, but they were giving each other support. They were so close to each other that the flares of the one aircraft could help out the flares of the other.
Okay.
So but only for the firing time, they had to separate out.
Right.
That is the time this aircraft was hit.
Mm.
So that is the thing. So Kargil was the turning point, where the government decided that, I mean, the Kargil committee report itself said that we need a dedicated attack helicopter for. So that is the time the first input to HAL went, to start designing a lightweight helicopter to operate at 16 to 18,000 feet with all armament.
With all weapons.
That is how Prachand came into being so many years later, and now it is operational, of course. And in between, as an interim, we also went in for the Apaches, which is about 9 ton. I mean, it's a much heavier machine than a Prachand, but then it can operate to some extent at altitude. So we got the Apaches after the Mi-35s, and one more problem that happened was with the breakup of the Soviet Union. The spares for the Mi-35, the overall used to happen in Russia and Ukraine. So we were not getting engines. Engines were from Ukraine, and the rest of the overalls were from Russia.
Acha, acha.
This was not happening. and so our serviceability was going down, you know. So there was a lot of grief about that. Finally, we did manage to. I think now we had a whole lot. I think 8 or 12 helicopters in storage, which were
Okay.
not serviced for a long time. Now they are getting serviced now. So we kept depleting our strength over time because there was no spares and no overall facility. And now, of course, things are much better. Now things are much better. And Prachand has come in a big way. And now big 156 more aircraft are going to come in, 60 for the Air Force, 90. So I think it'll be good fun.
So now I would like to have a brief description of the Mi-35 from you, sir. Like, what do you
Me
see it as a
35.
machine?
Okay. Um, if I, it's like a built like a tank. First, built
Okay.
like a tank. It's got armament all around, plating all around.
Armor plating. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a tank. It's very heavy. It's very heavy. It's got armor plating all around, tandem seating,
Hmm.
basic cockpit initially.
Hmm.
Then the Israelis gave us a glass cockpit also now. So we
Okay.
upgraded to better Mi-35.
Hmm.
So basic cockpit. The front guy does not have much instruments. He's just got the missile firing and all the sights with him.
Okay.
So the front guy is the systems operator, WSO, weapon system operator. The rear guy is the pilot.
Okay.
However, in emergency, the front guy can also take controls and land the aircraft in case of emergency.
Acha.
So both pilots fly, front and rear, but all the flying controls, everything is at the rear with the rear pilot. The rear pilot can also fire the gun in the fixed mode and the rocket firing is all done by the flying pilot because the aircraft has to be aimed at the target and dived at the target. So it's
Dived
a
and
flying,
fired. Okay.
yeah, it's aimed and fired. So therefore, the pilot fires the rockets. Rest of the armament is fired by the front front cockpit chap. Okay. Other than that, in a sense, I have not seen this. I mean, failures are very few. But if it happens on ground only when
Okay.
starting up or something.
Acha.
Once it gets airborne, nothing
Nothing.
happens to the aircraft.
Acha. Acha.
A few bullet hits here and there, nothing happened to it in Sri Lanka also. So we just came and quickly repaired and continued to fly. Engines were good. The Mi-35 is a little underpowered. It with all the armament slapped on, it was it was real heavy fellow to hover. Once it
Okay.
was in the air, of course, it was a thin body, so it was to accelerate
Mm-hmm.
very well.
But
One good thing about the Mi-35 is very fast, very fast. So it could reach speeds of 300 plus,
okay.
which is not possible in a helicopter of any other helicopter in the world. Max speed 335, top
335.
highest in the world. Okay, so we used to fly a normal 270, 280 kilometers an hour. We used to travel, so that's very fast. The second thing that it could do very well was low flying. Beautiful aircraft to do low flying. Absolute. We used to do deck level as they call it,
I think
almost
it was
touching the
very
ground.
steady.
Very steady to fly. So and it required pilot skills, of course, but it used to respond to our requirements, and therefore low flying was good fun. And it could, because it was supposed to fly low in search of tanks and all that, so it was supposed to fly anti-tank. It was basically an anti-tank, designed for anti-tank,
Role.
designed for Afghanistan, basically. And therefore, it could do low flying very well at low altitudes. High altitudes, it was not so much fun to fly because it had a lot of limitations.
As you said regarding the Cargill operations.
Yeah, same thing, same
Yeah.
thing. So we never operated it only for testing or air tests or something after engine change or something. We really climbed to 4 kilometers and above. Otherwise, we always flew below 10,000 feet, always
Below
10,000,
10,000 all the time. Okay.
all the time. And actually, we always flew below 50 feet.
Acha, acha, acha.
Most of the flying was done low level.
Acha, acha.
We were all low level specialists in those times. Okay. Other than that, we had some Russian help with us. We had Russian technicians staying with us who used to help us with the maintenance of the aircraft. Okay, because from the factory
Acha, acha, acha.
it was under warranty, and they kept they used to keep coming and telling us if anything went wrong. They used to come and quickly repair it for us. I've told you about the armaments which it had, and Baki, though it was uh, pretty nice, smart aircraft to be in, and once you sit inside the cockpit, you were like you could see everything around. Very nice, nice bubble canopy.
A brief
Uh,
description of the cockpit, sir, if you can give a bit of.
Cockpit had basic instruments, yeah, basic flying instruments, normal, not the electronic ones like you have in modern gadgetry, normal run-of-the-mill instrument. We had a moving map display, which was very unique to this. So a
Acha.
map was, it was a Doppler-based this thing. So a map piece could be cut out and kept inside a rectangular kind of frame, and then there was a crosswire which used to move on that map,
Acha, acha, acha.
a plastic kind of cross which used to move on the this thing, showing you where the aircraft was.
Mm-hmm.
So you had to feed in the latitude, longitude of the place, or feeding how much north you want to go, how much east you want to go, kind of thing, northing, easting, and feed it into the system, and the aircraft it will tell you how to navigate to that point. So
Okay.
that was a something different navigation system that we were exposed to. However, then the GPS by that time had come in, so it was GPS was also available to us as well as this system became actually redundant
Okay.
because once GPS came,
Right, right.
this was not so active. Yes, yeah. Another interesting thing that this aircraft had was the Spanka. It was called the Ispanka, ISPUNKA.
Okay.
It was an IR jammer.
Acha, acha,
We
acha.
never knew how it worked because there was no literature available on it. We just knew that in case of a missile attack on you, you are supposed to put it on so that it has got some threat library.
Mm-hmm.
It used to radiate some heat signature away from the aircraft, for which the heat-seeking missile could go and lock onto it. That kind of a thing. And we also had a very basic radar warning receiver.
Acha, acha.
So it used to tell us which radar is painting you, what kind of radar is painting,
Mm-hmm.
and it used to give us warning if a missile had been launched onto you, and that kind of a thing.
Acha, acha.
And it was NBC protected. The aircraft was nuclear, biological, chemical protected because it was sealing system. The entire cockpit was sealed and air conditioned.
Okay.
So it could fly in NBC environment. Just like a tank. Just think of a tank. It was just extrapolated into the aircraft from
Acha.
a tank. Yeah.
So, like how we normally think of Me forces, things are opening from the behind. I mean, it's a piston
Yeah.
engine,
This is a
Mi-35.
side. There's a side entry into the small place. There are those windows at the
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
And the windows could be opened, and there was a place to put your gun there. So six people could fire on the move from the sides.
Okay.
So six guys inside the passenger compartment with their weapons, our own weapon system. So pura tank ki tarah, it would fire on the side, fire in the front, and what have you. It
Okay.
was designed for that. But when you took in so many people, then we had weight issues in
Right.
India at least.
Right.
And Afghanistan was a colder country. I think they could manage to
Mm-hmm.
fly it with 6 troops and 8 troops, fully armed troops. You could be taken inside. Very
Very
cramped
cramped.
cabin. Yeah, yeah. We could hardly even my height, 5.5 feet, we couldn't even stand straight. We had to bend.
Acha, acha, acha.
It's that small. It was about 4 feet tall kind of cabin. That's it. Yeah.
Now, sir, I would like to have like a brief description of the crew and the equipment, especially the features of the aircraft. I mean, of the cockpit of the aircraft, and how the pilots could actually maneuver, keep it very steady, fly at low level, manage the night flying, all the specific details, sir.
Oh, that will be going into too much of technicalities. Only thing is that
Short, sir. Short.
yeah. When we started flying on the NVG,
Mm-hmm.
on the night vision goggles at night,
Acha, acha.
then it's a piece of cake.
Okay.
Flying at night or day is the same thing then.
Mm-hmm.
So once you're flying with the NVG, it was NVG compatible cockpit. So once you put the NVGs on at night, everything was as bright as day. In fact, any more light used to blind us. We required less light to fly.
Acha, acha.
So notwithstanding that, um, the it was a fully articulated, now this has become very technical for people to understand. A fully articulated rotor system, which means that a control input from me has a certain delay for the aircraft to respond because it is fully articulated. Okay, if it is rigid rotor system like what we have in the ALH and the LCH and all that, or the U Cobra and all this, the moment you touch the you control the aircraft responds much better, much faster.
And immediately.
So, and immediate. So the rates, the roll rates, the turning rates that you achieve in these kind of newer aircraft is much higher than what we could achieve in a Mi-35.
Okay.
It could just take about 2G max, 2.5G I think. Yeah, 2.5G to take. 2G we used to pull, max was 2.8G, 2.8. So it would not take much, 1.8G, sorry, not even 2G, 1.8G I think it was. If I'm not wrong, we can check what the G limits were. But so it could be maneuvered. It was good for maneuvering against a tank battle, slow moving tank battle kind of thing. There was no problem in that. Okay. The other thing was, of course, hover issues with heavy loads. Again, it had problems of hover in hot conditions. So we had to be careful about how much fuel we were carrying. So therefore, our loiter time in the our maximum range that we could go to was reduced. But now, of course, things have become much better. Systems have changed in the aircraft.
I think I don't know. Like these days, we can see mid-air refueling. I'm not aware if helicopters.
No, we didn't have. No. This one doesn't have.
Achha.
This one doesn't have. The Mi-25 doesn't have. 35.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, sir, coming to the actual fun part, a bit description of the weapon systems and the task it could do. And as you have mentioned that it can do very well against armor, of course. I would like to know a bit about like how it could tackle any armor threat. For example, like I mean, we have seen the great armor battles that India has faced. I would say like Lonjewala or somewhere in the Eastern Front in '71. That's the limited time that we had seen armor threats. So how could this helicopter fare in regarding taking out armor, enemy armor?
See, we had the Ataka or the Strum, STHRU, Strum missile. It had a good range, about 5 kilometers or so, and it was a supersonic missile. It was not a slow-moving missile like the earlier ones which we had on the Mi-25, right? Okay. So one had to just acquire the tank. Now we had a sight which was a periscopic sight.
Achha.
Like a periscope goes up in a submarine, our periscope was down under the chin of the aircraft. So the front chap had to go on the side and look through that scope, and then he used to magnify and look around for the thing. Once he used to acquire the target, he used to just put the cross on the target and fire the button at the correct ranges. Okay, so accuracy was very good. I have not seen a missile unless it had a problem with itself, technical problem, malfunction. Otherwise, all missiles used to go and hit the target. There was never a problem. That is one. Then we also had a simulator missile which used to, kind of record the firing, just show that the missile is going and see whether it hits the target or not. So that, of course, was there. Now, the problem in fighting an armor battle alongside the armor was how to identify, because when the armor is fighting its own battle, when they are close to each other, I can't identify one tank from the other from 5 kilometers or 4 kilometers.
Yeah, it's not possible. Yeah.
Very difficult. Provided we can recognize some flags or some marking on the aircraft, on the tank.
That's true. It won't be visible from 5 kilometers. I'm sure.
Yeah, and in the dust, in the smoke, in the fog of battle, it is difficult. It was difficult. So we used to always tell the army that we would like to take on the armor before the tank-to-tank engagement takes place. So you have a clear, defined line of forward location of all troops. Okay, forward line of all troops rather. So anything beyond that particular line is theirs. Anything inside is ours. Now that briefing, again we are talking about olden times when the information flow was
limited.
By the time I got the information that this was the plot and I could go and take on anything beyond this plot, the battle would have moved.
Yeah.
Half an hour, 1 hour, whatever time elapsed. By the time I got the information, briefing, got started up, came to the area, some time had elapsed.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, it was not so safe. You could have kills of your own in
Friendly
case you're
fire.
not. Yeah. So that was a difficulty as far as the getting the tanks were concerned. The rockets are an area weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Rockets are fired from much shorter distances, 1.5 kilometers, 2 kilometers maximum. Okay, so in that case, we can see the people or the tanks on ground, and a rocket really can't take on much of a tank. It can take on an area target, group of people, stroke tents, light vehicles, those kind of things.
Bunkers. Yeah.
Concentration areas of people, bunkers also not really with a rocket.
Gotcha.
For that you require that 130 millimeter rocket, massive S-24.
Acha, acha.
On single rocket, it was a huge fellow, and it was very accurate, and it could go to up to 2.5 kilometers away. That could take on a bunker. Okay. So these were rockets, different kinds of rockets that we used. So they were area weapons.
Mm-hmm.
Then we had the gun. It was a 12.7 mm 4-barrel Gatling gun,
Acha.
very high speed.
Okay.
So 4,500 rounds per minute it could
Per
fire.
minute.
A very high rate of fire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so therefore it was accurate, very accurate. We also had the 23 mm Gasha guns, the
Gasha.
GSH,
Acha,
Gasha.
acha, acha. Mm-hmm.
Fitted on the fighters also,
Mm-hmm.
which could be spotted. They were on the pod, on the wings.
Mm-hmm.
So they were fixed guns. So again, they could be fired only like the rockets.
You have to
In a
dive
dive,
and aim
and a
then
dive
fire.
and towards the target.
Acha.
Whereas the front gun was a swivel gun. We could
Hmm.
just swivel it left and right and fire at targets left and right
So
of the air.
this Gatling gun, kind of gun that we're talking about, somebody operated it separately, or did the
No, the front gun,
front gunner?
yeah,
Front
front pilot.
Okay.
Front pilot operated it. Yeah. WSO or whatever you call him, he operated. Or if you wanted to fire in again like a rocket, then if I took over control as the captain, then the gun used to slave to the 4.5 axis of the aircraft. It's to become steady.
Okay.
It was to become only 1.5 it could be. But that was really not required to be used that way. It was required to be used in a swivel mode most of the time.
So mostly I would say, sir, two-man crew was enough for the attack helicopter.
Yeah. 2-man crew was enough for that. But we had one more fellow on board.
Acha,
We are
acha.
standing behind. Poor fellow. He had no place to sit also.
Acha.
The Indians, we wanted to have one more. We wanted to have a flight engineer on board,
Right.
like we had for the Mi. We were taking it from the Mi-4, Mi-8, Mi-17.
Right.
We had come from there.
Mm-hmm.
So we were not used to flying the machine without a flight engineer.
Right.
Okay, so we put a flight engineer on board behind the pilot. He used to stand there and watch the engine instruments and all. Because low level flying, you are not looking inside at all.
Hmm.
Okay, so major emergencies, we had Natasha. There's a voice warning system. So a very cute voice used to come up and to say that something has gone wrong with one engine or hydraulics or whatever. And then you could take the actions and
Accordingly.
return the aircraft. But the engineer was carried by the Indians carried the engineer, although he was not required. It was supposed to be flown only by 2 people.
Now,
Yeah.
sir, as you had been a pilot serving in the United Nations missions, I would like to
Yeah.
have some brief anecdotes of yours using these weapon systems.
Okay. So the first time that I got to use the load of the aircraft for use against a target was when we were before the United Nations was once in Srinagar Valley when we had the Al Farhan had abducted a few journalists, foreign journalists also, and they later on killed them. So we had gone behind them and we were waiting for orders to shoot them down, but it was not allowed for whatever reasons, political reasons or whatever. So we will not go into that. The second time that we were fully loaded and ready to go was when the Atlantic was shot in Gujarat sector, okay, near Bhuj.
Okay.
There's a place called Bhuj where the earthquake took place, right? I remember. So we had gone there and we were patrolling the borders when the Atlantic was shot, where the 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 crash site, they were trying to take away the stuff from the Pakistanis were saying it is our side, we were saying it is our side, there was a lot of fight going on. And we were trying to pick up some of the stuff of the aircraft and get it this side to show that we had shot the aircraft. So that is the time when we opposed the Pakistanis fired at us also from an MMG on their side, and so that is the time when we were ready to go. I mean, fire live. Other than that, when we went to Congo, it was a routine mission, peacekeeping mission under Para 7. So under Para 7 of the United Nations, one can fire in self-defense, or in case your this thing is in threat, then you are given specific orders to fire at the enemy so that to normalize, not to kill.
Okay.
So we had an opportunity once when these Congolese army, they keep have a lot of infighting. So they separate into two camps and then they fight against each other. And so where we were staying in a place called Goma, there was these guerrillas kind of thing backed by some Congolese army. Those guys who had run away from the army, plus the help of the neighboring nation, that's Rwanda.
Rwanda.
So they were attacking our base. Okay, 10,000 people are coming towards us at night. Lot of firing.
10,000.
10,000. So there was infighting going on between the Congolese forces and the rebel force, and bullets could be heard flying over the camp. The stray bullets, that close. So we had only 4 tanks with us, 4 APCs, not even tanks. We had 4 APCs which we positioned on the outer perimeter of the airfield. And then midnight or so, we checked with UN at New York, who allowed us to fire. That is the time we went in with guns and our rockets loaded, and we fired for the first time. I had the I don't know whether you can call it privilege or experience, if I may put it, of firing against live people. Okay, it was not such a happy thing, we were fighting somebody else's war. They were not actually our enemies, but we were killing people. It was not a good feeling, but we did so. Okay, so there was an occasion when these people had taken over the army base, the camp at a place called Sake, which is about just 25-30 kilometers from Goma where we were. Okay, so they had taken over that camp and they had surrounded that camp. So we got a panic call from the army saying that come and help us out. So I had gone there with a young pilot, and there were these the leaders of the Congolese the opposition forces. They had one jeep. There were 5 or 6 officers, so-called officers. They called themselves. They used to suddenly, elevate themselves to major and colonel on their own. So they were in that jeep and they were going around. So we were told by the army guys that if you get that jeep, then we'll be able to stop this whole thing. So we looked for the jeep and we found the jeep. They were traveling at high speeds, and every time we used to come in for an attack, they used to go into the shrubs. We couldn't see them. So finally, we decided to play some, spy versus spy kind of a game. So we went and hid ourselves amongst the bushes a little far away, but our sight was slaved onto them. And so when they got in an open area against a hill, they had no choice that time. So that is the time we took them on, and we fired. First lot we fired 16 rockets at that vehicle, and when we went to see, it was completely smashed. The vehicle was just all twisted, twisted steel. Okay, and we could see some bodies lying around. We did not know how many we had killed, but what happened thereafter was that because of lack of leadership, the entire operation kind of caved in, and nothing happened thereafter. I mean, those people withdrew, people ran away into Rwanda, and all that thing. I mean, normalcy returned within a couple of days. We were back to normal life in Congo. Okay, so this was one thing that I remember very well. The other thing which is not such a happy thing to talk about, but I must tell you that we had the Bangladeshis and the Pakistanis also flying next with us, and we had the Chinese also there with us. So we were shoulder to shoulder with them as troops together, fighting. I mean, fighting a different war. So we saw that it was only the Indian troops which were facing the bullets. It was only the Indian attack helicopters which were, firing and doing offensive action. The helicopters of the Bangladesh people, they used to climb to 10,000 feet and say, no, till the time you tell it is not clear, we are not going to land.
Okay.
The Pakistanis also never went anywhere where the firing was. Okay, so we were the only people who were actually doing dirty work, if I may call it, in that country. In fact, it was a repeat of 1962 when the Canberras went in, and when
Right.
we had a lot of casualties then also. You know? So it was different. Sad part was that only Indians. We lost a lot of men also from the army, from the brigade. And
Okay.
we lost. We got our aircraft got hit, but luckily we couldn't. No personal damage to anybody. So it was okay. Okay. So it was more of the aircraft were flown if some militants were seen in some area or some groups of people were fighting. We used to just fly over them and they used to separate out. They were so afraid of the helicopter. Typical way of using it. It was called show of force.
Show of force.
So that is how we operated in Congo. And there are many more stories in Congo about, you can read my book, I've written a lot of stories about Congo in which how contraband is taken out of Congo with the help of aircraft landing on small roads in the middle of jungles and all that. So that's there in movies also, but we saw it in actual what
Actual
happens
life.
over there.
I've seen
Yeah,
it
we saw it.
in like social media only. These things happening. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had those. I think there's called the S400. What is it called? Some Argentinian aircraft, 400 something. V400, S400, something like that. So it used to land on a small 1 kilometer long road. It used to just cordon off two ends. It used to land inside the jungle. It used to pick up contraband and it used to fly out. Day in and day out, they were smuggling things out. It was all open. Congo is so rich that people are just milking it. Even the Americans, everybody was milking it.
Okay. Now, sir, you are talking about the problems of repairs, I mean spare parts and the availability of these parts. As you said, the problem that started, especially after the fall of the Soviet Union. If you could talk a bit about the problems faced by the Indian Air Force people regarding the maintenance and repairs that arise, especially of the Mi-35 helicopters, and how the people dealt with it in a brief detail, sir.
You see, the aircraft has to be kept serviceable for operations. So what happens is when you don't have adequate number of flying hours available to you, you restrict your flying for some time. You make sure that you get the minimum required flying for people. Otherwise, you can continue to practice. You can continue to do your exercises and all that. So there comes a little restriction in flying when we don't have spares. Okay. Notwithstanding that, there was a lot happening. We were trying to get some spares to suddenly arrive. Some one-on engine is to suddenly arrive from there. So it was being, but it was being crisis management actually, if I may say so, because the requirement was X and we were always getting X minus minus. Okay, so there was always a shortage of spares. But in Congo, mind you, we never had any shortage of spares. Aircraft were kept serviceable all throughout, almost all the time, 100% serviceable.
Okay.
It was because then we had a commitment to the UN that we will maintain that serviceability, right? So therefore, all they could do, they could pick out from other aircraft, handle spares, put them into Congo and use them over there. So Congo, we never had a problem. Problem was over here. So the technicians had to work overtime. What happens is when you have a problem, say if you have two components of this thing which are short. So what you do is any aircraft which is going into the hangar for servicing, you take out those two components from there, put it on this aircraft and make this aircraft fly. So this is called cannibalization. So if you do too much of cannibalization, it can lead to safety issues. Now, if you keep changing, engines from one aircraft to the other to fly it flies, aircraft is not meant to be broken up and put back, broken up and put back, and then flown. Once it is integrated as a whole, it should fly as much as possible you know, without any changes. So a lot of cannibalization is forced upon you because of lack of spares. The third, of course, is the ground crew gets overworked. The technicians get overworked because of this, and therefore a lot more is expected of them than what actually is if you had everything with you. But then that is the case with all of us in our own homes. We don't have everything, so therefore we have to manage with what we have.
Yeah.
Like a lot of generals have said that we have to manage with what we have.
Right.
But I don't think today is the time to talk about managing with what we have. We have to have much more to fight future wars than what we had in those times. We were yes. Let me tell you that we as a unit, as a air force, as a unit, we kept projecting our requirement. The air headquarters kept projecting the requirements to the government. ऐसा नहीं है कि we were just sitting and waiting and when the government will tell us. We kept we were proactive in telling this is going to happen, this is going to happen. However, there were issues about budgeting, there were issues about, like I told you, Russia going down, a whole lot of things. So there were issues, but I think we came out of it pretty well. And today, I think we are much on a good path now. We've sorted out all those issues that we had. Yeah.
And the kind of equipment on board the helicopter that's needed mostly repairs. Could you name a few of them, sir? Like,
Everything's got a life.
mhm,
Everything's got a life. Say rotor blade has got a life of say 800 hours. So at 800 hours, whether you like it or not, you have to change it.
right.
Or
Mhm.
or the some special dispensations are given. Okay, you can fly at 40 hours more till the time that blade comes. So you are extending the life by seeing condition, right? So this is another dangerous thing that keeps happening. That okay, thoda give 25 hours extension at one time. Let it fly a little more. Let it fly a little more. So every component is changed at its life end. It's supposed to be changed. Whether it be a tire, whether it be a seal, whatever, everything's got a life, and everything is recorded in black and white, or today on the computers, of course. So it tells you today so and so aircraft it is coming up for okay this component is due after 2 hours. So after this flight you have to change this component. So all this management part of it is taken care of by their technical officers. They look at the whole thing as a big a big jigsaw puzzle which they have to put together and say okay at this point I want this spare to come, at this point I want this spare to come. So they all calculate that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Okay. So which component I can't really tell you, but the small failures will keep happening. Some electrical fuse going, something happening. So those are minor things. Those are minor issues that can be rectified. Those are rectified. Those kind of spares are available. I'm talking about solid spares, like main rotor blades, engines, main gearbox, tail rotor shaft, tail rotor blades. These are big components which are they are flying components. They are maximum stressed components. Then we have the hydraulic systems. There we got the systems, bada wala systems which are taxed during flying, right? So
Right.
those if you one thing springs a leak, one particular pipe may not be available. You just keep waiting for the pipe to come, right? So ऐसा छोटा मोटा चलता रहता है. It's not that that. So the management is done by those guys, and I think they did it very well. I can't really pinpoint which components failed and what was wrong with the aircraft. Aircraft was very good in the air. I mean, very few times that we had to really come back from a mission. Never. I have not had a one odd time I have come back with a small problem and it was rectified and I went back. So that also was okay.
Now, sir, regarding the attack helicopter, as you're an expert on that, what is the future of attack and combat helicopters in the Indian Air Force, and regarding the scenarios and the situations that might be developing in the near future, sir? If you could talk a bit about that, alongside the integration of the Mi-35s.
Integration with?
Integration with the Mi-35s, Mi-35 helicopters.
Abhi to Mi-35, if you ask me, is on its last leg. A few years more, maybe 7, 8, 10 years more maximum. So it will fade out of the system. Everything will be now Prachand based.
Prachand base.
165 helicopters, huge number.
Huge number, right?
Yeah, so we'll have what 15 odd units, 10, 15 units total. So they will be flying the Prachand only. Most all the attack helicopters will convert to Prachand. Some we've got those Boeing Apaches that are happening. The Mi-35 will fade away very soon. So integration as such is already integrated into the system. It's already integrated into the war plans of the army. So what it is to be primarily used in from now on is going to be in the desert sector and the Punjab, the sector. Those plain sectors of the of our this thing where they can be used freely and they can be used easy. They've got no restrictions of flying. So desert is the best, of course, for the attack helicopter too, because you can find a tank from miles.
From miles, right? And that is
That's
where
when
the
it,
Pakistani armored thrusts always came.
yeah. So
Yeah.
tank battles are generally fought in that area. Punjab is no longer a place for tank battles to take place because there are too many obstructions now. So you really can't have a tank battle in Punjab. So I think Rajasthan is where Mi-35s will be used. And as far as present scenario is concerned, if you ask me, the primacy of the UAV. Today we have had the UAV attack by Ukraine
Right, right.
into Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they have gone very, very deep the way they have used them. We have seen UAV operations in of Sindoor
Right.
that happened, and so the UAV is a game changer in the future battle. Okay, so it will be the first. So the contact battle that we are talking about, we are all talking about till now Mi-35 contact battle. We have contact with the enemies, visual contact.
Right,
We may
right.
2 kilometers apart, but still contact.
Mm-hmm.
He can fire at us, I can fire at him.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are going into non-contact battle, where I am 150 kilometers away, I see an aircraft on my radar scope and I poop off a missile on him. Okay, or for that matter, for a ground-based system, if it sees a aircraft which is a threat, it can shoot it well before. I mean, you can today you can today actually moment an aircraft gets airborne in Pakistan, you can actually make out kahan se airborne hua hai, which aircraft it is.
Right,
It's
right.
that good,
Right.
right? So the umbrella, so that is one. So your air defense umbrella has become stronger and stronger and stronger. So you are not this integration of the air defense will not allow use of attack helicopters in the classical sense. Okay, so hit and run missions, clandestine missions, anti-terrorist missions, okay, and all kinds of missions like in Kashmir sector le lo, ya in the Ran of Kutch le lo, or you go down towards the east, any kind of operations through Bangladesh that are happening, chota mota, small sized.
Right, right.
These are places that they are best used in today. In that large battle where thrust lines are going in and classical fights are taking place, in my personal opinion, as a kind of a military, I don't call myself a historian, but whatever little I have read, I feel that by the time we reach that stage, the battle will be called off. The escalatory ladder is now the UAVs also come in as one ladder, one part of the ladder. Okay, so by the time you reach for the troops to get in contact with each other or the tanks to fire at each other, a lot would have happened. For example, your media war would have happened. Okay, like it happened this time. You would have already jammed whatever networks they have, right? You would have pulverized his systems by attacks on his computer systems.
What
Uh,
happened during Operation Sindoor? Yeah.
yeah, you could just maim his systems on the other side. So all this will be happening without human contact taking place, without deaths happening. You're killing him silently, basically. right?
Right.
Then the UAVs will come in, then they will still have remote control. There'll be birds, they'll be flying and killing people through a window, 200 kilometers away from where they have been flown from. You have seen it, Osama bin Laden, you have seen so many things happening, right? So the UAVs will be coming. I am particularly interested in knowing when are we getting helicopters which will be UAVs unmanned,
Unmanned.
which will be used for these kind of tasks. Oh, it has got huge scope,
Huge scope. And
huge
I
scope.
think these quadcopter drones are doing their job in.
Similar. Absolutely. Quadcopter drones, a helicopter will carry much more armament, much more. Like if you have an F-16 which is remote controlled,
Yeah.
what else do you want? The Americans use F-16 remote controlled, yeah, for their tests and all,
Right. Right.
uh, to carry out the trials for the UAVs. The F-16 is pilotless. It is shot at by. It's become the target.
Right.
Okay. So it is possible today to have everything for this thing. But like I told you, attack helicopters will be required. They will be used in the kind of conflict that I have talked about. Classical battle, heavy air defense, problem. Uh, it's too thick AD environment at the moment for survivability.
For an attack
Slow moving.
helicopter. Right.
Yeah. Although it has got advantages of flying low, in between trees, this, that, and the other. But first small, quick missions and a back type of thing, not continuous use at one point.
Not at all like fighter roles, I will say.
No, not even. No, fighters also going to go out of fashion very soon because most of the targeting will be taken by long ranges, all the missiles fired from a fighter or from the ground,
Off
wherever.
on the ground. Right.
But contact battle like Second World War, we had those dog fights.
Dog fights. Right.
Yeah. Then we
Pilots
went.
see each other. Yeah.
Then we went off a little further from each other.
Mm-hmm.
Then we could fire at 1.5, 2 kilometers in visual contact, but our weapons could fire that far. Then we went further up. Then it became BVR, beyond visual range.
Visual range.
Now it is super beyond visual range. 150, 300 kilometers away, 400 kilometers away.
Right.
So you can't really now talk about classical use of
Helicopters. Attack helicopters.
for that matter, classical use of tanks, classical
Tanks.
use of fighters.
Mm-hmm.
They'll have to be used differently.
Right.
That's for sure.
Now, sir, before concluding our program today, I would like to know a bit about your flying hours on the Mi-35.
Oh, I have total of about, I think, around close to 6,000 hours total. Out of which, I think 1/3, 2,200, 2,003 odd hours on the Mi-35.
On the Mi-35. Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around that. Because maximum is Chetak Cheetah, that smaller helicopter, around 2,000. 2,000 plus on the Mi-35, 25, and the rest on Mi-17, Mi-8, all those other helicopters.
Okay. So you flew the Mi-8 as well.
Yeah, I flew Chetak Cheetah, Mi-8, Mi-17, Mi-17 V5, V5. Then I flew the Mi-17 1V and the Mi-25 35. Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And before ending, sir, I would like to have a brief introduction of your father as well, and regarding his contribution in the 71 war.
How does it come in this picture? Anyway.
As you are an Air Commodore of the Indian Air Force, and my channel is based on the 71 war, sir. I want an integration of it.
Okay. So my father served with the Indian Artillery in the 71 war. He was the 2IC of 23 Mountain Regiment then. They were at Lekhapani, a place called Lekhapani in North Assam, from where they moved into Bangladesh, close to the Bangladesh border near Tripura, I think, if I'm not wrong. And thereafter, they fought the war in the hills, basically. But other than that, my father's contribution in the war was a little more than that, because what he told us was that he was part of the Mukti Vahini, Mukti Yoddha,
Hmm.
and he was training them to fire the same weapon that they were called the 75 by 24 pounders.
Okay.
The guns that they had. They were Second World War vintage guns that the Indian Army had,
Hmm.
and these guns were given to the Mukti Yoddhas to use in the mountain areas. So my father told me about how he used to dress up like a truck driver, a cleaner, and lungi, and go across and train people. So he entered Bangladesh first time, I think, in May of 71, May 1971. Stayed there for a few days, came back, then again went back, and so that story, I really couldn't get the full story out of him, but this is what the gist of it is, that he was part of the Mukti Yodha, and then uh, on the 20th of December, 16th was the 16th December was the
Victory Day.
signing of the victory day, or signing of the surrender. After which my father came to Dhaka airport. He was staying in Dhaka International Hotel, that famous hotel which was bombed a few days earlier. So he stayed in that hotel. They had some party sharty over there after the 16th. And from there he came to Dhaka airport, from where a Caribou aircraft of the Indian Air Force got him to Calcutta
Okay.
after the war. That was the 20th of December 71 he was out from Dhaka. So he used to talk about plying his jeep over here, an open jeep, after the once they had entered Dhaka and we had taken over, the surrender was imminent. So dad used to be going around in his jeep, open jeep, all over town, meeting people
Hmm.
and all that. So he made a lot of good friends there. It seems he was very outgoing kind of character. So he went and made a lot of friends in the streets of Dhaka, and they were very joyous to meet him. That's what his friends tell me. That he was very popular as the 2ICO of the regiment over there. He was actually commanding the regiment. His CO had been posted out during the war. He was an aeroplane pilot, so he had to go and fly the helicopters. So that was technically the CO. And there was his namesake also in his regiment, another Sathe, who got a Veer Chakra thanks to my dad. He wrote a citation, and
Hmm.
uh, he got a Veer Chakra during 71. So dad had a lot of stories to tell about 1971, and I have recorded them in some of the stories in my book, 1971.1999 War Stories करके एक book है. So I have recorded those 71 and Kargil stories, in fact. So, so dad was a good soldier. He, he was a typical Fauji man with a lot of josh
Hmm.
and gung ho all the time. Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, I mean, you're carrying the legacy, sir, I would say. Yeah.
All right. No. He was a self-made man. I'm into the armed forces because of him, because of his motivation. Yes, because of his motivation. All right.
Right.
But I think he carried he was the first one from his family to ever venture towards armed forces. Because that was a great decision in those times,
Hmm.
in 1950s when he joined, where no, from a very, very, poor, lower middle class family, uh, where giving 28 rupees for the exam itself was a big problem.
Hmm.
Okay. He came up from there to become what he was. So I think he was much way ahead of what I could achieve. I had everything on a platter. I got good education thanks to them. I got good grooming thanks to them. My parents, they came from different backgrounds. Their stories are different.
Right.
Much more fighting that they have to do with systems to come up to where they were.
Wonderful, sir. Thank you for your talk on Mi-35, sir. And like as always, it's a pleasure talking to you. And I
Yes,
hope
same here, Devo. And keep at it, keep at it, keep at it.
I will,
You're
sir.
doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Wonderful job. And I just hope that all that you're doing leads you to screen, finding the big screen that you're looking at.
Let's see, sir. Let's hope. Let's hope.
Yeah.
And thank you, sir, for your talk. And I really love that shirt. Yeah, our job is to hit the target, not count.
Yeah, so that's, if you want to order it, I'll give you the address. You can
Please,
order
please,
it.
please, sir. I would like to have one.
Yeah,
Please share it.
yeah. I will.
Okay then, sir. Bye.
Chalo.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Bye.